This is the Backlot 605 podcast, and it is now time for another interview from the Backlot. Welcome to the Backlot 605 podcast. I am one of your hosts. I am Casey Kelderman. Joined with me, as always, is my co-host, Mr. Brian Mensing.
How's it going?
It's going great, Brian. Today we are joined here for a very special interview with a couple of the stars and the director of Before the Fire, which is an upcoming pandemic thriller about a television actress who returns to her hometown in South Dakota, where we are from, as an unknown virus begins to plague the nation. The film is written by and stars Jenna Ling Adams and directed by Charlie Bueller, and we are joined by both on the show. Thank you both so much for joining us. This is going to be a lot of fun to talk to you two about the film.
It's great.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So first of all, congrats on the film. We both had a chance to watch it over the last week, and we're both very, very excited to talk to you two about this film. And what is maybe even more exciting is the news that just dropped a few weeks ago is the film is going to make its debut on streaming August 14th, and it is going to be hitting select theaters, including Mitchell, Del Rapids, and Huron, South Dakota. So right around in our neighborhood here in South Dakota. So that is very exciting news. So first of all, Charlie, how does it feel to have your very first feature film debut in your home state of South Dakota?
It's so surreal and great. The movie's having its first screenings in Mitchell, which is the movie theater that I grew up going to when I was a little kid. And it's just going to be so special to see, like, driving up to that theater, which I know so well, and seeing our movie poster and having all my friends and family be there and having my whole, community who really were so instrumental in getting this movie made, be there and be able to see it on the big screen. And so I couldn't be happier that the first people to be able to see it in the theaters are South Dakotans, because this is so South Dakota made, and it's fitting that it goes back there.
Yeah, this is a very South Dakota film. I mean, it is set in South Dakota, but you guys also did shoot the film there as well, and even the characters in the movie, they all feel very South Dakota, and it's a weird thing to try to explain to people, but if you could try to explain to people what does that really mean to you, the South Dakota aspect of this movie?
Well, I mean, I think South Dakota is just a really unique place. Like, even down to, my DP would always talk about, like, how the sunsets are even different in South Dakota, like the way that the light is, the way that storms brew on the horizon. Like, a summer storm in South Dakota is a very particular thing. And if you grew up here, you know what they're like, how, like, a tornado can sort of come out of nowhere. And so it was really important to shoot it here. Like, you can't fake a different place for South Dakota. And then also a lot of our extras, and, Jenna's from the Midwest. Charles, who plays the villain, is from the Midwest. And it's just, I think, a particular energy that you bring to the role. Even, South Dakota accent is a very specific thing. And so it was important that we had those elements be right, because so few things are shot there. And I wanted to do it justice, because, again, it's my home, and I love it.
So as we start to acclimate to this new life that we have within COVID-19, and what we see the very similar, eerily type of events that are in the movie in comparison to what we're expecting here, seeing here in real life here. This is all shot, obviously before the pandemic here. Obviously this isn't stemmed from, current events and whatnot. What brought this idea to form to want to create this story?
Well, I think, one thing that Jen and I were talking about when we were trying to figure out, when we were first developing a movie is, as female filmmakers in an industry that's extremely, oh, my dog just joined us, in an industry that's so difficult to break into, especially if you're a woman, we knew that we didn't want to wait for anyone to give us the chance to do this. We didn't want to wait for investors. We didn't want to wait for someone to give us permission to make a movie. And so we wanted to use resources that we knew that we had access to for free. And so since I'm from South Dakota, my grandparents have this beautiful farm near Delmont. And so I knew I could shoot there. And we were also thinking, we knew that we wanted to do something, you know, in sort of like a post-apocalyptic or apocalyptic world. And so we were trying to think about what would cause this sort of global upheaval while also being cheap and invisible, you know, something that we can actually do. And so as we were bouncing around ideas, we thought about a virus, which, you know, you feel this like looming impending doom and danger, but at the same time, you can't ever see it. And so that's kind of like how the spark of the idea came about. And then we, you know, built from there.
Yeah, Jenna, you are credited as the writer on the film. Was this something that you felt almost now looking at it a little prophetic? That you came up with this story that's very, very similar to what's going on in the world right now.
It's really, really strange for all of this to be going on now. I originally wrote a script that was a dystopian apocalyptic film, and we really wanted to shoot that, but it was just too massive. It would have needed, you know, giant sets being built. We would have needed multi-millions in the budget, and it just wasn't going to work. So we were definitely already in that headspace for shooting something that was sci-fi adjacent. But the virus definitely was a backdrop. You know, it wasn't supposed to be about the pandemic. The Contagion's already been done. We don't need to see that again, and we can't do that with a small budget. But yeah, that's always something that really has interested me, is basically like when, you know, shit hits the fan, like how do people act, and, you know, what that brings out true character, and also who rises to the occasion. And that's what really interested me about Ava is, you know, what does she uncover about herself, and what does she face from her past? And that wouldn't have happened if it was just a story about her going home to visit her boyfriend's family. Like you needed the heightened like adrenaline of the world falling apart to get her to face this.
Yeah, and you bring up your character of Ava, and for both of you, this feels like a very personal film for both of you, in front of and behind the camera. What has it meant personally for both of you in making Before the Fire?
Well, I think we're both two people who are from the Midwest and who left, you know, South Dakota and Minnesota, obviously, to come to Los Angeles to, you know, pursue careers that wouldn't be possible there. And obviously it's not, I mean, not autobiographical for me at all, because I still have a great relationship with my family and I love going home. But I think there is something about, being a woman being forced to deal with the difficulties of your past, and also, sorry, stop it. A woman being forced to face her trauma and to face her difficult past and to grow from that. And I think having that set in South Dakota was super meaningful to me. What do you think, Jenna?
I mean, for me, what I've always been drawn to as a writer and as an actress is identity, and how your upbringing shapes that, but also who you step into after you leave. And that's something for me that I never really felt like I belonged in Minnesota. I loved it. I have a wonderful family. The community was very supportive. It never really fit. And I think I always knew since I was really young that I was going to leave, and that I was going to go far away, and I was going to do something in the industry. I was going to act or write, produce, all the things. I wanted to get out. And there is this weird disconnect for me as an artist and as a woman, and who that person was and who I am now. And basically exploring like the identities that you shed, and then sort of the disconnect when you come back and you face it. When I go back home, I'm hit with these waves of, oh, right, I was that person then. And it's easier to forget about it when I'm out here in LA and I have my life here and I have my friends here that I've known for, 10 years, and I've established something completely separate. But there is this sort of nostalgia too, that I go home and it's like you can never fully let go of that side of yourself. And I think that's something with Ava that I would always dive into and also I didn't grow up on a farm, but my extended family has farms and my dad grew up on a farm. And so I am aware of that world, and you don't get that community out here at all. There's just this weird disconnect I have with who I am now and who I was then, and also where do I belong. It's almost like, and especially as an actor, you're always stepping into these new identities and putting on these new kind of skins, and you almost feel like you belong everywhere, but also you don't belong anywhere. You know, the contradiction of that is really interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I myself, one of the things that I just one of the little small things that, you know, maybe a lot of people wouldn't even connect to for the sake of the countryside. Like I'm with you. I did not grow up in the country. I grew up in the city, but my grandfather lived on the farm and whatnot. And in the garage was all the setup to make all the casings for when he would go hunting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just those little things that you guys put in there, knowing that, you know, whether anybody would notice it or not, somebody who has lived that life or has known somebody of that is going to pick up on those little things.
Yeah, definitely.
And I love that detail, because that's something that I've never seen on film, someone loading shells, which I know that sounds so well because, you know, my dad's a hunter. I grew up around hunting, and so I, like, the guys would just have all of the loaders like sitting on the counter, and I would just hear that sound as they did it. And so I love that detail, and it's exactly what I think people would do if they're prepping to have to hunker down for a long time.
Oh yeah.
Is, you know, you wouldn't just like buy a bunch of already loaded shells. You'd have all the materials and just load them as needed. And or like when they have the cow, which I've also never seen, but it's a scene that people will see. And you know, that's the reality of farm life, is cows die and they need to be moved, and like they're giants. And I, even when I saw it, when we did it in the film, it's pretty jarring. And so to be able to add like those like very particular farm details, I think was something that we could only do in South Dakota.
So being that this is a quote unquote pandemic movie, even though the virus per se is the secondary villain to this and whatnot, is what I do think that definitely sets this film apart from a typical pandemic movie. What would you guys would say would be influences to this, that, you know, to making this film, you know, being that we see pandemic films in drama and horror and even comedy?
To me, this is a family drama, you know, set in the heightened world. And so like it is a genre picture, but it's really about, you know, a virus being the thing that's forcing this woman to go home. And so I think that's why it feels a little bit different than other pandemic movies that you see, because most pandemics movies are about like solving the virus, you know, like they need to get the vaccine and they need to solve it. And it's like, the thing that I love, and I think we're going to start seeing coming out of COVID-19, is movies that are more dealing with the obstacles that viruses create, you know, like for instance, social distancing or having to be under lockdown. And like, you know, I think we're going to see more like pandemic themed rom-coms, because, you know, people who are trying to date virtually. And so it's interesting that that's kind of something that we were already doing, and that the virus is the thing that creates the conflict, but it's not the heart of the story. The heart of the story is this woman having to, you know, a prodigal daughter going home and having to grow and confront this path that she's been running from for a long time. And so, but I think like, even though it might feel like it stands apart right now, I have a feeling as productions start going again, we're going to see lots of movies that are more dealing with, you know, people living within a difficult circumstance, but the difficult circumstance does not define their story. Because I think that's how life is anyway. We all have like millions of things going on within COVID-19 that we're battling, and COVID-19 just makes it harder.
Yeah,
it also made the research more difficult, obviously, then, because we were being very theoretical about what would happen. So now we would have a lot more material, just like, news footage to look at and seeing how, you know, things would go down. And I think we did hit a lot that did feel very prophetic for sure. But yeah, it was definitely a lot of digging and trying to figure out what would actually happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for both of you as filmmakers, what does the medium of film mean to you? I mean, you both work in the industry, but where did this passion begin, and what really keeps you two going and wanting to create films like Before the Fire?
I just love stories, you know, storytelling. And ever since I was a little kid, I remember just being obsessed with movies. Like I remember when I first saw Twister, I think that parts of it were shot in South Dakota too. And I was, you know, obsessed with it. One, because it felt like it was connected to me. Like it didn't feel like it was, you know, Hollywood, Wizard of Oz, something far away. I could, you know, it looked like places I could recognize, but at the same time, it was like this crazy story. And so I think, you know, I love the medium of film because it's so collaborative, and I love, you know, visual storytelling. But ultimately, I also love reading. I love photography. I love music. And I think that it's just something, you know, even before we had written language, humans have been reaching and understanding themselves and their culture and their history through storytelling and allegory. And so that's something that I love to be able to be a part of, because it's not just entertainment, but it also helps, you know, societies understand themselves through the stories that they tell themselves. And so to be a part of that, and, you know, I think it's a really big responsibility. And these are stories that you choose to tell, and the actors that you choose to put on screen, and whose perspective you're choosing to center a movie around. Those are all things that shape society in a way. And so I think that it's really powerful, and I love being a part of it.
Yeah, I guess my film journey started with theater. Minneapolis was a huge theater town, and so I grew up acting. And, you know, I'm actually a very introverted person. I am not like the stereotypical performer personality at all, but acting and theater was always a place that I could go and sort of connect with the deeper emotions and kind of like purge all of that out. And I would feel this kind of like electricity when I was on stage, and there was no other way I could really do that. And then when I was in high school, I started getting into filmmaking. I, you know, got a Netflix subscription with the DVDs, and I was seeing like independent films and foreign films, and my whole like world was just opening up. And I realized that I, you know, in high school, I was like, I'm definitely going to film school. Like, I don't want to study acting. I want to study film production, screenwriting, producing. And for me, growing up in Minnesota, that was so far away from my experience. So I knew that I wanted to go and just learn the craft, and acting would always be there, especially if I moved to LA or New York. And so I went to Emerson College in Boston, and I focused on film production over there, and learned a lot, met my community of people that I have out here. And yeah, I moved to LA and just like did all the different jobs, like behind the camera, in front of the camera. I've worked in pretty much every department on set, which I think as an actor definitely gave me an advantage, because I understand, you know, camera setups. I understand lenses, and even something so small like I did an indie film end of last year that's almost done now, and I couldn't check the frame. I couldn't quite tell like what was, because the camera was really far away. But then once I asked what lens it was, like I knew what they were seeing, and I knew how to adjust my performance just based on that. And from all of the DPs that I've talked to, they're like, if actors just understood lenses and camera and like how this works, like we can help each other more cohesively. And I think that actors, even if they're not interested in doing production at all, I think it's gives them such a leg up on other performers too, because like you just know the team, and you know your surroundings, and it really is, you know, a collaborative effort. So yeah, I guess I've kind of done all across the board, but I couldn't pick between them. So
Yeah, that's one thing I think Charlie mentioned it is that filmmaking is such a collaborative effort. And from your story, Jenna, that seems like you've had your hand in a lot of different things to help you prepare for whatever role it may be in the future, you know, as a writer or as an actress or whatever it may be. Do you guys both feel that's a very important thing for up and coming filmmakers, whether actors, actresses, directors, writers, to learn all the tools of the trade? May not be a perfect at it, but to know how it all works.
Definitely. And especially like I worked for years out here as a producer and doing branded content and music videos. And because I had worked in all of the different departments, I mean, I've even worked in an art department. I was a stylist on a few music videos, like when I first started out. And just because I worked that closely in those departments, I could oversee it better, and I could, you know, crisis manage things better. I could foresee things that they were going to need or things that were going to go wrong. And also working as an actor, you know, understanding how to work with talent, how just like bodies move around in a space and how things need to be set up. And I have to catch myself sometimes when I'm just acting on something, because I'll start to do other people's jobs for them. Which is a little annoying. Like I'll show up at a certain spot just because like I could tell based on the call sheet that day where I was supposed to be then, and they're like, oh, well, we're not ready for you yet. Like you gotta wait, just go to your trailer. And I'm like, oh, right. I'm just supposed to wait for everyone else to tell me where to go. And as a producer, I'm used to like being a few steps ahead of everyone. And sometimes I have to really teach myself to like let go of that and just like only be an actor and leave it at that.
And I think the reality is when you're first getting started, you should be making your own stuff. And, you know, I always say like the best networking you're going to do is not real networking. It's just, you know, supporting your friends, because rising tides raise all boats. And at a certain point, your friends are going to start becoming successful. And, you know, we've all been helping each other and working on each other's shoots for years and years and years. And so I've played, like Jenna said, millions of different roles. Like I've assistant directed, I've been a DP, I have helped produce my friend's stuff, and then, you know, producing my own stuff. You sort of start to learn all the different jobs. And I think it's out of necessity too, because if you want to work in this industry, you have to, you know, be self-motivated and make your own content. And so, you know, the byproduct of that is wearing a bunch of hats and doing every single job. And then eventually you might get lucky, you know, to only have one job, which is the main job you want.
The set goal.
Yeah.
So Charlie, Jenna actually kind of alluded to this, being from Minnesota and thinking, okay, if this is something I'm going to do and want to do and whatnot, I'm going to LA, I'm going to New York because that's where I need to go. How have you seen, you know, South Dakota being your home state, change in terms of accepting film as a viable industry and an art form here at home, as opposed to the big cities?
I haven't, and this is actually a conversation I have a lot with you know, producers here in LA. Is that South Dakota would be a wonderful place to shoot. You know, it's and if you have anything that's set in the Midwest, you should absolutely shoot it in South Dakota, but also period pieces, anything that needs to be that take place in like the Old West could happen in South Dakota. You have the West River, which is more mountainous. You have East River, which is more prairie. Like it's just, it has such a variety of landscapes and backgrounds that you could use. I think the biggest issue is tax breaks. And so this is like future me, but something that I would really like to do is have those sorts of discussions. Like, how can we build the South Dakota film industry? Because it will create jobs. You know, it's not even just for like creatives, but there's so many support people that you need, like, you know, truckers, electricians, gaffer, like grips, restaurants, hotels, tourism after you've shot a movie there. Like, there's just so many opportunities that if you created that infrastructure, you could help build up these small towns that are losing young people because they don't, unless they want to farm, they don't see as many opportunities. And so I think you could prevent that brain drain. You could help pump up pump up small towns that might have a slowing down economy because lots of people are leaving. Most of the people who live there are older. Like a lot of the small towns, like the average age is 60 plus, because the young people aren't staying. And I think film could help that, because those small towns will need hotels if you have crew staying there. You could build big studio sound stages near some small towns. And so I think there's a lot of potential, and I think there's only something to gain and really nothing to lose by helping to promote that. And so I think South Dakotans love movies. I grew up, that's all we did was watch movies when I was a kid. And I think that they maybe don't understand and see that, no, you could actually shoot these movies here. There's no reason why it needs to happen in Wyoming or in Louisiana. Like that could just as easily happen in South Dakota too. And I think that South Dakotans are creative enough, and especially like I said, like for like Teamsters and stuff, like they already know how to do that. And so it wouldn't even really take training. And I think it would be wonderful to bring more films to South Dakota.
And that's one thing I'm really excited about with your movie premiering here in South Dakota. I think having the film playing in South Dakota theaters with South Dakota audiences is going to really open some eyes to people saying, wow, this was made here. This was made in my backyard. Like this, it seems like then more productions can then be made here. And like you said, create an industry here in South Dakota. And that's something we've talked to multiple filmmakers about, and South Dakota is kind of just this untapped area for that. And I think having films like yours premiere and play in South Dakota is really going to help open people's eyes and open their minds to what the state can be in terms of the film industry.
Mm-hmm. I think, really what it's going to take is, the more boring practical things when it comes to like taxes and giving productions an incentive to shoot in South Dakota rather than Minnesota, where it might be easier to get a rental house, but as more and more shoots happen, then it's easier to get equipment there. And I think that's something that the state legislature should for sure talk about, because I think it would be wonderful.
Definitely.
The last couple questions we got here, what's next for both of you? Are we going to see more collaborations between Jenna and Charlie? Is this going to be a future partnership that we're going to be able to see in the future going forward?
We'll see. We're sort of like doing different stuff. Like I just signed with a new commercial directing agent or management company, and so I'm going to branch into the commercial world as well, which I'm really excited about. And I'm also working on a TV show that I'm really excited about. And so there's definitely lots of stuff in the pipeline, and hopefully I'll be able to talk about it a little bit more soon. I know Jenna's got a lot of stuff that she's got brewing.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of scripts in development right now, which is great because that's all I can really do at the moment is keep writing. I'm writing a dark comedy pilot for HBO Max right now. That one's kind of the farthest along. Of course, we can't shoot anything for a while, so we'll see what happens there. And I kind of branching into TV writing and producing, because there's just so much exciting stuff going on in TV, and I feel like especially for female writers and showrunners, that world has really opened up, and I've been really playing around a lot with dark comedy and just having this I feel like there's this new wave of dark comedy in the last few years especially, and that has really inspired me a lot. I think I used to sort of put myself in this kind of gritty drama box, which I love, and that is still like very much a part of who I am, but branching out of that and being like, okay, what is the full spectrum of human emotions that I can explore in this piece now? And really diving into that has been so much fun. And then I have another film that is basically done. We just have to film a few days of pickups. It was shot in Louisiana actually, and the Virgin Islands. We just have to get it safe enough that we can, shoot a few more scenes, and then that will be finished. So I'll have another movie coming out soon.
Cool. Awesome. Very, very exciting for both of you. Last question that I do have, let's end on a fun one. Let's say both of you are getting sent to a farmhouse in South Dakota, much like the main character in this film, with no internet, but you do have a Blu-ray player. What are the 3 Blu-rays you are bringing with you?
Okay, this is funny because the movies that I like to like, my desert island movies are so different from like the movies I would feel drawn to me. But movies that I have found myself watching over and over, even in this pandemic, are Pride and Prejudice, the newer one with Keira Knightley. I love that one. My Best Friend's Wedding, which is also one of my favorite movies. And what is another one? Twister. I really like Twister. I could watch that anytime.
Oh.
No, okay. For me, it would be. This is cheating a little bit because they're TV shows, so it would be multiple DVDs. But I'm gonna go with it. Probably The Sopranos. I will watch The Sopranos so many times over and over again. It's such a gem, and it's hilarious too, which is really fun to watch, and it like really holds true these days too. And I would have Fleabag season 1 and season 2, because that show is perfect and nothing will ever change that in my heart. And then sort of my little not guilty pleasure, because I have no guilt involved with loving these movies, but The Mummy and The Mummy Returns. That's 2 again. I keep cheating, but
that is completely okay. No.
They'll come in a
Brendan
2-pack.
Fraser Mummy's great.
Yeah. Classic Brendan Fraser.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome picks. Thank you both so much for joining us. That is Jenna and Charlie from the Before the Fire, which is debuting on streaming and select theaters here on August 14th. So if people can find...
We have more theaters than you named at the beginning. So it'll also be in Fargo. It'll be in Rapid City. It'll be in Wyoming. It will be in Del Rapids. Did you say Del Rapids, Huron, Watertown, Mitchell? And so people West River will also have, a closer screening that they could watch it to.
And do you know where the film will be streaming on as well for when it debuts?
It'll be on all the major streaming platforms. And so they can get it on iTunes, Amazon, Google Play, Vudu. Basically, if they have movies there, it'll be there. The ones that the pay-per download ones.
All right. Awesome. Thank you both so much again for joining us. This was a blast, and I can't wait for people to check out the film. And maybe it hits a little too home for some people, but that's all right. That's all right.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.